good?
Yep.
Thank y'all for coming. I guess the very vague description I gave Dr. Locke was just that things that we see aren't always as they appear, and that was a hard one for me to learn this semester. We had a lot of students that came into the office and wanted some accommodations that were very different than what I was looking at, and I had to tell myself that sometimes what they're requesting is what they need more than what they appear to need. And that seems to be a very hot topic right now on our campus. And so I guess I wanted to ask y'all, what she's providing y'all with as well is just a good article that came out not too long ago. And it might have been you who sent it to me, Sarah, was it?
It was kind of what prompted me to ask you if you would like to host a brown bag, because I read this in Inside Higher Ed. And it's written by a mother who is also a professor. And she has a daughter who's on the autism spectrum and who also contributed to this article. And I thought it was interesting when they talked about, needs in a classroom. I thought it would be worth having a discussion. But I don't.
And I think to know that a community college is quite different than a four-year university. The ADA is a very gray area, to say the least. I know y'all are real surprised at something that the DOJ has oversight on is really vague, but it is. And it gives colleges the amount to do things on their own as long as it's reasonable for that disability that is diagnosed, which can make it tough. But with this example is a good example because this student, it might have been different if they set foot on a college campus, and I think she even mentioned at her university, if I remember correctly, they didn't provide like note takers or something. And that's a lot of students, and that's something that our students we see that are going to transfer and matriculate onto a university, we try to encourage them. Now remember, maybe this is something we should, let me see, what are your notes looking like? Oh, okay, well you're actually doing way better than you were 3 semesters ago, It's a good conversation to have even as a teacher if they come to you. We always encourage our students to come talk to y'all. I think it's a good practice for them to get into. I can't tell you anything if you pick up the phone and call me unless I have their permission. And we have some who are like that who will say, would you just explain it? It's a lot easier.
Even with other professors, you can't disclose anything.
Correct, unless I have their permission.
Right.
I have had students, and it does, I will say typically to be students on a spectrum, who will say, will you let them know, like I'm not gonna get jokes that they cut in class, and I'm not trying to be mean, but we had the teacher that said, she always has such a foul look on her face, we're really worried that she's really upset. She looks like she's very upset at me. She actually enjoyed the class, but that was her effect on her face, and she really enjoyed the class, so it wasn't that at all. It was just, but she didn't know how to explain that. Leanne often facilitates that. Sometimes y'all may have seen her with one of your students, how to go in and introduce the instructor to the student and say, okay, now you have great questions, go ahead and ask them. And then usually she steps out, depends on the situation, and lets that conversation happen. Sometimes I just need that little bit of encouragement that someone else knows what's going on. But I always tell students, you do what you feel comfortable letting the teacher know. And remember.
Can we take a minute and introduce?
Absolutely.
I don't know if everybody knows who
everybody, yes.
For instance.
For instance. Go right ahead. I'm going to let Susie start.
I'm Susie Jerry. I'm a professor and the clinical coordinator in the Human Service Provider and Substance Abuse Counseling Certificate Program. So our students are literally from 18 to 61, and a lot of them returning to school after a long time.
Alex Ibe, Life Sciences, and transitioning to the academic next few.
Leanne Talas, I work for Dawn in the disability office, and my job mainly is to work with some of the more at-risk students. A lot of them on the spectrum, some of them not. And we go over class assignment due dates, we go over how to, get on Moodle all the time, how to respectfully talk to an instructor, how to.
Time management.
How to go to an instructor during office hours, or ask questions, how to survive in college.
Or talk them off the ledge sometime. Lots of talking
Sometimes we
off
talk off
the
the
ledge.
ledge,
And
I'm
Leanne
really
has-
panicked.
Leanne's been meeting with a lot of her students in here, which has been good because then they kind of become familiar with this space and they'll come use it at other times, which I appreciate as well.
And two,
Yeah,
that's more
usually-
casual.
Yeah, and I
That's
try
what
to make
she
them
likes.
meet in here, and then I'll also, at the beginning of the semester, if they're new, I make them go to the Student Science Connection, what do we call it now?
Academic Support Center.
That's it. I make them go over there and I introduce them to everybody. And I say, hey, this could be your home away from home, this could be your home away from home, you need to go to these places.
Jared Abraham, Humanities Department Chair.
Sarah Locke, director of the crew, and I teach English and finishing QEP directorship.
Lori Gage, I teach geology and physical sciences department chair.
And I think that with the group that's here, I know we've all had contact with each of y'all for sure. And it is very differing for a lot of things, from science to the humanities or liberal arts. And most often, that's the ones that they come in going, well, I was modified, which is a big difference, and that's the biggest thing. We've tried really hard, that's been one of my goals, is to get into the high schools to help those students know about this before they get to your classroom, so that they understand, I'm not gonna have a word bank in A&P. I'm gonna be penalized for spelling on my lab test. That they usually forget about English. I'm like, you have to use Turnitin. You have plenty of chances to review your spelling with electronically before you turn it in, so there shouldn't be a reason on that one. I get it for that, but we're gonna work on that. We have study strategies for that.
And what's the process usually when students come to you to request accommodations? How does that process
Work.
work? It's different from high schools.
Yes, it is very much so. They have to bring us paperwork that has been submitted within the last 5 years, that's ADA's best practices, that says, that has a diagnosable condition of sort. Whether it's a learning disability, a mental health disability, or a physical disability of sort. And then, sometimes practitioners, depending on the testing, will say, this student would benefit from a private testing room, or extra time on a test, or someone to help them weekly lay out what that time schedule needs to look like. They can do the studying, they just need to make sure they have it laid out. If they have those kinds, that makes it a lot easier for us, because we can look at it and say, okay, so now that I have your paperwork, I do have a brief application. On that application is what their disability is, and I'm gonna tell you, what do you say, Leanne? 7 of 10 will sit in our office and go, I don't know. I went to an art meeting in high school, I don't know.
My mom took care of all that.
My mom took care of all that. We get that a lot. So I'll say, well, I need you to know so that you can know what you're good at and what you're not and what you're worried about. And that's usually my first question. What scares you about college? What are you worried about? Because then that's usually where I can find some kind of area that we can help them. Others who are coming from a 504 might be a little smoother. Their 504 paperwork will work for that.
And what's 504?
That is the umbrella, the high schools and public school, kindergarten through 12 are using if they don't qualify for under a special ed umbrella.
Okay.
So if they can't find something, but they know that something's just not working for them, they can put them under a 504 plan and give them accommodations. Most often, dyslexia, that's the most common. Chronic illnesses are usually under hepatitis.
My son has celiac disease.
Celiac can fall under it.
So far everything's gone really well, but if for whatever reason the school decided not to accommodate him food-wise, then I can send him under a 504, then we would have to.
Okay.
Diabetes,
Okay.
epilepsy, those are all very common. We have a lot of kids and students, period, and adults walking around on our campus with those. It's mainly a contingency, because if you've ever taught a class where you've had a kid go down an epileptic seizure or a person and you're going, oh my gosh, what do we do? It's hard, and we try to make it a contingency. I just want your teachers to know if this happens, what they need to do in their classroom. And I think that just kind of covers y'all, and it covers us.
Or that would be the student that whoever necessitated the peanut allergy.
Yes,
things,
yes,
that
when we
it
had
wouldn't
that
be
one.
an accommodation in the class, but, you know,
Right,
the
just
instruction.
more of a, try to help prevent it as much as can, and then if it does happen, here's what to do. That was one, I forgot about her, it's been a while.
Dawn, are you saying something about seizures or what we do if they have a seizure? Because, I'm thinking I have a student, I don't know if she's come to your office or not, but she's got a condition and talks about she may have a seizure and don't call the hospital and.
Right, which I will tell you Weatherford College hates, and they want it signed that we are not, and we had a kid who had Dr. B in Dr. Twanabasu's class. I think he had 3 seizures that semester, and he was deaf. So, not only that, but then your interpreter has to be there when the EMT arrive, and then you really need a medical interpreter, not your interpreter, and it got real hairy that semester. But knowing what they want, and he was always like, no. So when EMT, because everybody calls 911, that's our first instinct as a human being. And then he would say, yeah, absolutely, it covers everyone. And then he would say no and sign that he, is not gonna go with the EMT and he's gonna stay on campus. So
they could do that.
They can do that.
They need to come to your office.
Right, because automatically we're gonna call. Weatherford College will not let me not call, or not let you. I mean, that's to cover us all.
I would guess that, just from an instructor perspective, and somebody who directs a visible
Yeah.
center where people come
People are in.
People often come, from a classroom. I have a student who's doing this week, oh my God, I've had that more than
Yes.
once. And I'm guessing that most of us are really careful about liability.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so we want to make sure that we're,
Because that safety is first,
Yeah.
absolutely.
and first and foremost, of course, the students' well-being.
Absolutely.
But also in the back of our mind.
Yes, liability for what we've
We
done.
and the college are protected.
And that was with her, because she would have to use her EpiPen. But once she used her EpiPen, she still had, even though she may physically look okay, she had to go to an emergency room. So, it still needed to be done, which was what was in her paperwork. We have some right now that they have someone in the classroom with them to watch for the seizure. However, when they're in the testing center, we have to meet with them. And it's not because they need oral tests or anything, it's simply just to make sure they don't have a seizure. That's all. Because in that private closed room over there, no one would know. They're not where everybody can see them. And not all of those have cameras, so that's a problem. So if they do feel like it's something that affects them, sometimes another thing we're seeing a lot of is post-concussive syndrome. A lot of post-concussion, it's hard on the reading in the English classes. There's like 4 dual credit kids right now, and papers, doctor's papers like this, but like blue paper, not white paper. They can't sit directly under a light in the classroom. Lots of triggers with that, so.
Does the veterans office and your office overlap, like for PTSD?
Yes, some of them. Ralph does try to send them down to us. And those are very, really different. I can't say that we handle any one. They're kind of like our students on the spectrum as well. They're just so different that each case is individual, and all of our cases are individual. No 2 dyslexics do the same thing. And so I think that's where I like to look at once they bring that paperwork, because that's what I used to do, was that kind of testing, the diagnostic side of it. I like to dig through that. Most people don't. I'm like, oh yeah, and on this, and on that score, It's like always a fight, like who's gonna read this first? Because we both want to look at it, because you can bring something from your doctor that says, I have post-concussive syndrome, and by law, I can't deny you that. But the more detail I have to know exactly how it affects you, the better off you and I both can help that student in the classroom and prevent anything from coming up. A lot of people like to overdo it, and then we end up backing off. They don't need what they thought they needed.
And has that been developed more, the post-concussive, has that been developed more in the last few years? Because I had a student probably 4 years ago who was on the softball team and had gotten a really bad concussion. And she kind of casually told me some things, but there was no intervention. There was nothing official that came to me.
And you know what's weird is that, I say weird, I would, being a former sports person, think that a lot of them are sports related. There are 3 that we've had, actually all in the same family, I want to talk about a really odd coincidence, that were 3 separate accidents, not even sports related. And so most often they're not, I haven't seen many, the trainer is good to call and let me know if one has one. It's been like 2 semesters ago, he let me know about one that was just kind of, hey, we're gonna watch him and see, but nothing developed from it, he came out of it fine, no ill effects, I guess.
So, in cases where like the doctor or in the paperwork it doesn't list their accommodations, how do y'all go about generating those?
They tell me typically what they've had at the high school level. If they have their high school paperwork, that's even better. We can kind of look at it and we can explain and differentiate that this is a modification, this is an accommodation. Here's what it looks like on the college side. Is that something you think, this is reasonable for your condition? Will it benefit you, yes or no? Usually they say yes. And we will have students, when they request their accommodations, they'll put a check in every box. And I'll come back and go, now, hold on, you don't need a scribe because, that's not reasonable for your disability or whatever. And I go, oh, okay. So that's why we really do like to talk about it first with the student, face to face, the parent if they're fresh out of high school, just so that they understand. Because they think they just walked on campus and like at high school, everyone knows it. Or because they told me in a phone conversation 6 months ago that I told all their teachers, and I said, no, with paperwork, it has to be signed off on. And I like to help try to advise them so that I can see where their hiccups are to pass along, because y'all are good about contacting me.
How current will the diagnosis be from the clinician? Do you take something that has been there for 5 years and they throw it at you and you begin to work at it? Because there are certain diagnoses that you're supposed to grow out of.
Absolutely.
And if there's no current diagnostic paper from a clinician, then how old does it have to be for us to honor it? Because you don't have to honor it.
After 5. And what we do is we keep track of that, and then we send letters like, this is warning you that you have, here's the resources. We do have a list of resources of different clinicians that can do different kind of testing. We let them know, this is a list of resources you're more than welcome to use. You have until this date to get these. Beyond that date, you're no longer allowed accommodations according to the ADA. So we try, and then we keep a copy of that, because inevitably they come back and go, no one told me that. Well, I have a paper that we sent you, and I always try to tell them. And then we have some who are just like, I don't think I'm using it enough to spend the money because it's not cheap. However, neuropsych evals have become, even for learning disabilities, have become more common. And those are usually covered under a copay through your Affordable Care Act, if you have Affordable Care Act insurance, actually. And even Blue Cross Blue Shield, those can be covered under a copay. You might have to pay it twice, once to be tested and once to get your results, because they're going to want to talk to you about it. But still, $80 is cheaper than the $1,500 it would cost you off the street.
Again, what is considered a reasonable accommodation? Say for example, you have somebody who is diagnosed with chronic seizure or epilepsy, and they come to you and they say, oh, I will be a nurse, that's my goal. Would that be a reasonable accommodation for such a person? And in that situation, how would you address it?
Most often, we let them know that with the first thing, anybody who wants to take a licensure, whether it's for teacher or nurse or EMT, we let them, I pull up the website and show them, now this is what you can have on your licensure test. Like, you can't have oral tests on an EMT test in firefighting. You can't. It's not allowed for their licensure. So I'm going to tell you that if we sit and read your test to you, we're giving you a crutch that you're going to get to your final big exam you've paid for, and you're not going to do well. I can't tell you you can't do it, but I'm going to highly tell you you cannot do it legally. I can't say you can't. But usually with seizures is memory issues. That's usually the first thing that most people with epilepsy or just seizure disorders struggle with, is memory. And I ask them what tools, I tell them what we can do, like, yeah, I can give you extra time to think, because a lot of times seizures can be triggered by pressure or stress. We don't want that. I can give you that extra time on a test, but not an assignment. So if you know you have that research paper coming down the line, that big midterm test in A&P, you have to make that time management schedule that Leanne's worked with you to get to it. We're not going to make that, we can't extend that. But I tell them, you have to remember in the long run what this is gonna look like in your job setting. And there is a website, it's called JAN, Job Accessibility Network. It's a really good resource for employees even. I just helped a friend who was recently diagnosed with ALS get some information off of it for some accommodations she can have in her workplace. And there's also things like, okay, I'm a nurse, but I have this, so what kind of accessibility what am I allowed on my job for accessibility? So that can kind of help them. I can pull that up as a resource and say, look, you're not gonna be able to use that on that kind of job, or you can use that on that kind of job, but it's gonna be a struggle. I actually just had a phone call yesterday from a student who wants to bring her service animal to the paramedic class. Yay.
The reason I'm asking these questions is say if you have a kid that was diagnosed with some form of disability, maybe in the middle school, and then they get to high school, things looking good for them, but they still have the same disability. But all of a sudden they say, oh, I want to be a nurse, or I want to be a paramedic, or whatever they want to be. And we know physically, and they cannot perform the skills of that job set that they want to become. Do we refer them back to their clinician and let them talk to their clinician, their goal aspirations, and maybe the clinician can advise them and modify their accommodation, tell them, say, look,
this isn't the best route for you. Yes.
Because since you cannot tell them that you send them back to the clinician.
I can. And as a person who went through that was something my first job out of college was I was coaching and teaching. I taught PE. I was on my feet from 7 in the morning till 7 or later at night. And then I was diagnosed with lupus. And my doctor was like, no, this job will not work for you. Like, you need to find a new career. You have to find a different path. And so I think, and I've used that example with students, and I said, I think you need to seriously talk to your doctor about what this is going to look like for you. Because even we've had people who want to do nursing that couldn't pass the, bend over, there's you have to bend over, you have to be able to bend over to a certain flexion and hold so much weight. And they're like, but I'm really good at, A&P. And I said, I get it, but physically there's certain things that job requires that you and I can't, and I can't accommodate, because I can't say, oh, you don't have to do that part, we're gonna let this person do that. That's not accommodating, that's not reasonable in that scope. But I do refer students back, because a lot of them will bring us old paperwork, and I'll say, we'll go back to the same doctor. And you know what, if it means enough to them and they think it's really valuable, they'll do it. If not, we never see them again. And that happens a lot. Most often too, they want to be excused from their class. Excuse my 4 weeks from Diane's, yes. Excuse, and Lori's, excuse, my 6 weeks of absences. And they call, 6 weeks after that to let us know. Not when it very first started, when they saw a problem coming down where maybe we could do an incomplete or we could work on. So we always try to tell them these aren't retroactive. You have to use them from one point going forward, which is why people that show up today to get accommodations, and it happened last week, I'm like, at this point, I don't know if it's going to do you any good, because you can't go back and use them. So if you're failing right now, chances are, and usually I email y'all saying, is this person, do they even have a chance of passing your class? Because I don't feel like we all should go through the paperwork if that's not the case. And I don't know that that's legal, but I do.
What about if a student who has ADA paperwork is requesting something that's not on there?
Absolutely, you're not allowed. You're not obligated to use that. And I can tell them no as well.
Well, and that's why I was wondering
And they don't like it, but-
how the accommodations get generated. That like if something was missed on the original list.
And if they're asking for something that's very different, I just had a student ask for, she wanted to be able to type her government essays. And so I said, okay, well, I need your paperwork, bring in your paperwork and let's look and see what it says. It very specifically stated that she was tested for dysgraphia. She did not meet the qualifications for dysgraphia. She is not dysgraphic. What it boils down to is she is a perfectionist, so she always writes. And so once she messes up, we wad and start over, so we never finish an essay in a good amount of time. So I told her, okay, so because of that, obviously, you can do that, but you cannot use a computer because it has nothing to do with your handwriting. You're gonna have to handwrite your essay, but I can give you extra time to do it, so you can make an outline and then start writing. You can write in pencil, but that's not reasonable for someone who does not have dysgraphia or any other, actually, she doesn't have any other diagnosable.
OCD.
Which is what, and I asked her, which is something I can usually go, so have you seen, I mean, do you have other tendencies that fall in this line? You know, tell me more about, and that's when I can ask them, but.
So if someone has, let's say, a mental illness type disability, bipolar, something along those lines, what are the types of accommodations that would be offered for
most
mental
often,
illness?
Giving them that extra time on the test, because they tend to overthink things when they're in a racing in their mind. It's like a competition almost in their own mind, what they can write down the fastest. And in a private room, because they typically do talk to themselves, which is not good in your classroom when 27 other people are testing. And sometimes that's okay, but if you've ever seen the private rooms over here, they're small, which is why, like my student that's in Wise County, he has a lot of, his was PTSD, he was a veteran. We have to do his tests in the big conference room over there, because he's by a door, he can have access to see things, and no one's behind him. So that's a special accommodation. I haven't done that before, but we did it for him because he needed it for his 2 online classes, and it works. And so we just set up in the conference room. He has a lockdown browser. He don't have books or notes. We can ensure it's still like the testing center's, equality and integrity, but not anything else. And I think that those are most often the hardest, because those are typically the ones who want excused absences as well. Because one's major side effect of depression, you don't want to get out of bed. That's very, very common, and we see that a lot. And so I just try to encourage them to talk with their teacher, let them know the situation. Hey, I'm really not trying to skip class, but I will tell you I have some that do milk it, that I know, I know that that's what they're doing, and I always tell them up front, and also tell students who have tendencies to be angry or maybe have been diagnosed with a behavioral health disorder that's not medicated, they're not on a bipolar med, or they're not on a schizophrenic med. Just tell them, you're in college, you're under the confines of all other students' code of conduct. If you lose it in a classroom, anybody can call 911 and have you picked up. I just want you to know, if they fear for them, they're allowed to call the cops, and at that point, the disability is off the table. And that's a hard conversation to have with parents and students. But I don't feel like it's not fair if they come here and we don't tell them that, because in a school they would be, pulled away, and we just call the school resource officer and we work on trying to calm them down. And if it might not be the teacher, you might have rapport with that student, and you can kind of say, I know it's a rough day, I just want you to take a deep breath. But if another student in that classroom is fearful and they call, there's nothing you and I can do about that. And that's the thing we try to get across to them. Yes, you might be cool with your professor, but no one else in that classroom understands what you're going through. And it's really hard. It's very hard for those students. That's the ones that we're seeing the most. Their retention is affected horribly, even with accommodations and without. We've just kind of looking at both ways on that. That diagnosis is one that we can typically get pretty updated on, because they stay in contact with someone, whether it's MHMR, where they have a personal counselor, a psychologist that can, and I like the ones that'll say, we've been working on this, so these are my new suggestions from my counselor. We don't get those very often, but sometimes I do, and it works, he wants me to try writing to see if I can take my own notes and focus and see if that works. Because a lot of the meds also do mess with focus. So the meds for heavy mental illness, it messes with their focus. So very fine medicine, would you say? Like, it's a very fine balance. I feel like it's a very tight line that those students have to walk to find that. And the worst is when they go, well, I'll just go taking it all together.
So if somebody had, let's say, a situation in a semester where they were having some trouble getting the medicine regulated, they could come to you and say, this
Yes.
is the problem I'm having, and you could let us know so we could start thinking about
Yes.
incompletes or
Right.
whatever early on.
And that's what I try to tell them is, I want you to go and do what you can do in your class and be very honest. In private, it's another thing. I love to walk up to y'all, tell me if I'm wrong. Right after class, oh, here's my accommodations, bye. Here's my accommodations, bye. Now, we tell them, it's like a preached speech at the beginning of every semester. Find your teacher, find their office hours, go have a good conversation with them, share what you want to share. But if they don't know, and especially those, I say, if they don't know that that's what you're struggling with, they don't know to know to anticipate that. But you're a really good writer, and I've had that happen. They'll say they write great essays, or they just don't come, and they don't come to class, or they do really well on the test, but they're not showing up for class. And y'all are worried. You do the early alerts, and you put it in there. And I tell the students when they come in, and I pull up an early alert, and I say, look, your teacher's telling me you're doing well. You have great writing. Here's what we got to work on. I need you to talk to them, because sometimes they'll involve, I mean, we have 2 right now that are voluntarily committed in a behavioral health. So they're going to miss at least 7 days of class. It's a minimum of 7-day stay right now for them. And that's time they're not in your classroom. And they're not failing their classes either. They're doing well in their class. So, but if y'all don't know that, and I'm not at liberty to tell you that, it makes it hard. But if they've shared that with you, and they've shared with me and signed off that they know, like Dr. Block knows what's going on, we can have that talk.
So if it wasn't a behavior or something diagnosis, do substance abuse and alcoholism go under this at all?
It depends on how affected you are by, especially if it's memory or tremors. I've had some students that have suffered severely from tremors that you can't read their writing. It's been a while, we haven't had anybody in a long time with that one, for drug and alcohol purposes. But yeah, I mean, it as long as someone, and typically what's happened is they'll diagnose them with something, the clinician will, as a result of drug and alcohol abuse. We have seen that. So often, like TBI or traumatic brain injury, those are the toughest too, because you can't see them. They look, well, let me rephrase that. We have some that you can tell, obviously. They might be in a wheelchair or some other, but we have quite a few walking around that look just like all of us, and you don't know that that's what they've been through, and their memory is most grossly affected, their memory is, which is tough, because I know ADA says we should accommodate them, but at the end of the day, I think, how successful are you going to be in a job? And I had a mom call me 2 days ago. Oh, no, guys, it's only Tuesday, right? Friday, maybe. And she'd been 3 years ago in a car wreck, her senior year of high school. There's even a question as to whether she got her high school diploma. They really couldn't tell me that she was going to go back to the high school and check. But if you ask her what she did at junior prom, she can remember. But she said if I ask her what she ate for lunch 10 minutes ago, she can't. And I told her, I said, I'm going to tell you, wandering free on a college campus with a memory from 10 minutes ago that you can't remember is not safe for her. I mean, let's forget about accommodations and classes and intelligence. That's not safe. I mean, she don't know if she's eaten. She doesn't know if she's gone to the bathroom. She doesn't know where she is. She doesn't know who's safe, who to contact. That scares me. And I understand that she's under your house 24/7 right now, and it's probably a lot to take in. I completely understand that. But that concerns me, safely walking around here going, literally, she even referred to 10-second Tom in 51st Dates. She said it's like 10 minutes is her. And I said, I really think maybe you should talk with Texas Workforce and see if there's some kind of a job skill that they can find her. That memory maybe isn't, it's just a repetitive, I do the same thing all day, so there is no need to remember. But it's something that lucratively she can get paid for and, find something to get out of the house every day. She said she's still going to therapy. And who knows, her doctor, she even said her neurologist can't tell me if this will improve or not, even though she's only 19. They can't tell me if it will improve or not. And I was just like, I'm just honestly going to tell you, safety's sake, I don't think this is where she needs to be. And some people listen and some people don't. Just a side note.
So what would you suggest? I was thinking about kind of changing the subject some, but like,
Go right ahead.
say someone with a behavioral issue where, say like autism or something like that, where I recognize that, or they do the accommodations, and I understand they're not trying to like be
Right,
that's
right.
just how they are. What would you suggest for the rest of the class? Like ways to handle that with the rest of the class?
Yeah.
So
Because
they
it's
can
hard
still
with first.
participate in like, yeah,
And
where
you're
I
still
can't,
being
where I can't disclose it.
legal, right,
And,
right.
But where, like say, like where they can still participate in the class in the way that the class is designed in, say, groups or something.
Right, or small discussion, group discussion, or class discussion.
Yeah.
I think most of the time, being very honest in a one-on-one situation, like, I know you were really upset today, and I understand that, but you have to remember, not everyone in the room understands it. So, maybe we've had on like a code word, like I want, if you're feeling it and you need to step out, or you need to come back in, or we've had a student that carried a card that literally they just handed to their teacher on the way out the door, and it was like, I had to take a breather. Then once they're in a better state, to have them come back, but that's something that they need to talk with you about so that y'all both can understand. And to be honest, I think a lot of students in the classes assume things that aren't necessarily true about a student. But then they'll realize, or they'll sit next to them and be like, they're really smart. I need to be in this seat next to this guy who takes really good notes, who knows all the answers. Although he might get really agitated, and I can tell it. We try to encourage students to utilize, like sit by the back, use the timeout, but to talk to y'all about it so that you can incorporate it, because that's hard, that's a hard bump, and I don't know that I can tell you an answer
I
to
had a
that.
student last semester and I thought it was just going to be a disaster in like group work, and he was really, like he kind of excelled on those things too, so I was glad I didn't like, try to
Do it beforehand.
take him out of that situation.
Right.
I think it was a good experience for him.
And I think some, like you said, it's flourish or fail. I mean, it really is. And until you're put there, you don't know. And sometimes they'll say, oh, I can't be around other people, or I can't do group work. And that's when the advisor in me says, okay, let's think about this. What's a better setting for them, and not someone who does 5 group projects, maybe just 1 group project, or, where we can kind of help them more evaluate that. I think that's a good, I don't even know. Even me, thinking myself in the classroom, I don't know. Because everybody's so used to high school where they say, y'all know, George Jr., when he gets help, he'll go out, it'll be okay, and we can't do that. And I've had students who've been very compassionate. They've come to my office to say, I really think there's a kid who needs help in my class, but I don't know what to do. Like, they're that compassionate person. They're going to be in a social work field, I'm sure, but, and then I've had others that were scared by it, and that's the one that concerns me.
Can we talk about misconceptions a little
Yes.
bit? You had that in your title, and I don't want to ask anybody
No.
to speak for, other people who aren't here, but if anybody has personal experience that they want to share also, about misconceptions or what it's like, from a student's perspective. Yes, because as faculty members, especially if we came in like traditional academics or, where we didn't come from.
K-12, right.
Background where we had, coursework on that, or where our classroom management is, developed on the fly, and Diane has both really, but what that's like from an instructor perspective where we might have misconceptions. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, and I think to make y'all feel better, we have misconceptions, do we not? Like, we'll be like, oh, this is going to be one that we're going to have to really, make sure they've got this time management down, and they're the ones who at this time of the semester I'm going, I can't give you enough kudos. You're doing great in class. You're always on the ball. You're following all the procedures we ask you to follow. You schedule your tests on time. You go talk to your professors. I've seen them walking around campus. Their professors go, hey, how you doing? So to know that we all have them is okay. It's hard because we want to say, oh, we don't judge anybody. But I think the biggest thing is that if you feel like there may be something in your class that we didn't accommodate that could be accommodated, to let us know. Because that's where, and we had one this semester in a wheelchair that I was like completely so focused on thinking he was cognitively going to need maybe oral tests or extra. No, his biggest concern was where does he put his wheelchair at the end of the day? Like, I was totally not on his path, and then I realized he doesn't need that. And I felt bad for doing that, because I was like, oh, he doesn't need, it's not even an issue. Go back and look at your paperwork. You just read this, of course, read a lot of them, so you have to kind of think about it. And I think too, knowing their first 2 semesters may be very different than their last 2. And they've grown, and then they handle things so much better, and they come to us and go, really overwhelmed right now. I know this isn't gonna go well if I stay in this course. I'm gonna go talk to my teacher and see about dropping it. That's good. That's what we want them to learn. That's what we want them to learn from meeting with Leanne. They bring their planner. They know they need to put this down in their planner. Leanne doesn't have to say, is that in your planner? Because they've already written it down in their planner. That's what we're wanting. But when that very initial meeting happens, a lot of times we're rushing to figure out what they need, what do I think they need, and sometimes what they tell me they need and what I think they need are not even the same. So it's kind of a trial and error, but that's why when I said this was my topic, sometimes we can overdo it or think they need more and they don't, and we have to back off. And remember, just because it's on that paper means they might not use it in your class. I have students that we check everything because we list all those courses on one paper. But for English, they may need it. But for A&P, they may not because they love science. They're really good at science. Science just comes naturally. And I'm bad to make the assumption that everybody hates math. There's no math teachers in here. I can say it. No. And then this semester, I had a girl who scored perfect on her TSI. I had her go retest last week, and she tested into calculus on the compass. So those students, I have to remember that although you may do really, really excel here, this is going to be a struggle for you. This English is going to be, and she's like, I'm about this writing a lot of papers kind of thing. And I guess just knowing that how they speak or how they look is an indicative of what they're going to do in your course. And that's hard for me because I use those as a diagnostician to think what I might need to be doing for them. And it might not very well, we don't need that. And then there's others that come in with a whole host of things that we can't do. We have to have that conversation. But for the most part, I think just knowing that first impression isn't always true. First impressions aren't easy for students with disabilities, I think. It's just like these people, like this lady and her daughter. Students on the spectrum, not all of them are shy or introverts. Many want to talk. Many want to make social engagements. Many want to have relationships. It may still be tough for them, but having a group project might be a good place to encourage that and facilitate it in a way that they see another group, how they work, so that's how this group needs to work. Mental health also brings up boundaries. A lot of our students don't realize there's boundaries. Like I don't need to announce things in class in front of people. I've had a lot of that this semester. Like teachers going, oh my gosh, she said this in front of the whole class. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? I was like, well, there's nothing we can do about it now except that I can talk to the student. And when we met this person,
we can have a conversation with that student outside class.
Absolutely.
Also say, hey, that's really not appropriate for class.
Yes. Well, I had one last semester, maybe last fall. They wanted us to have a discussion with him, who's not one of our students registered through our office, although I do think he probably could be, but he is academically doing well and doesn't want any, because his sneezing, he obnoxiously blows his nose in class. So I just asked the instructor to kindly, after class, have a discussion with them about blowing their nose outside of the class, not in the class. And they wanted me to talk to him. I said, well, me talk to him is not going to help. I don't know the kid any more than you know the kid. You've had him in class. So it was one of these. And so we got it settled. And it worked. I don't think he realized he was being obnoxious. But they wanted to say, and I was like, no, that student's not registered with our office.
This girl was in my class.
Maybe. It wasn't you, but it may be.
It's not me, but I know.
You may have benefited.
You might have benefited from the conversation.
Yeah, but it happened in my class that I had to tell the guy, say, hey,
Yeah.
maybe we should take this.
Yes, exactly. And he's one that, when you see something like that happen, the conception is, oh my gosh, it's going to be a long semester with this kid. But he was a great student. Academically, Just had a few social nuances we had to worry about.
And I've had good experience in here, if we have students working in here who maybe are easily frustrated and, you know, if they're working on their own with technology and they get frustrated, I've had good experiences saying, remember that's not appropriate in
Yeah.
here, understand being frustrated.
What can we do to help you?
Anytime I've had to do that, I've had students, you know, the student has said, okay, I'm sorry, and then apologized to whoever else was around.
Yeah, they kind of just
And it's
realize,
fine, and then we go on.
whoa, I did that. I mean, I think it's like what we do with our kids. I lose it and I'm like, okay, wait. Mama didn't mean to lose it. Sorry, hold on, let me back up a little bit. But we've got to change how we approach this. That, you know, what would have been a better way?
Or Leanne talked to me about a student who needed a timeout, but, you know, and I was allowed to say,
Yes.
will you take a timeout?
Yeah.
And then the student would take a timeout and
Be done.
collect himself. Yeah.
And like that student who we were really worried about was calculus student of the year last year. Like, I mean, you can't, I wouldn't have guessed that the first time either, but I think too, the longer they're here, and I think Lori can probably attest to this, the better they get at the routine and the better they see that, hey, this isn't high school and not everybody's gonna know everything and I can make new friends that I haven't known my whole life and I've learned how to take notes, or hey, I've learned how to be better at reading a chapter, stopping, making some notes on paper, going back and seeing what I need to do better. And I try to preach that self-awareness. Like, are you gonna be, is that something that's gonna upset you in a class? Well, then I don't wanna put you in that class, or, you know, right now anyway. Let's save that for third or fourth semester. You know, speech freaks you out, but you have to have speech for this 4-year degree you want. Okay, well then let's back off and talk about other options for right now. We'll get you comfortable with this campus before we embark on that journey. There's other ways to do that.
It definitely has to be a la carte, depending on the
It
student
does.
situation, teacher-student
does.
situation. I had a student a couple semesters ago that had a dog. She was not authorized to, the student was not authorized to have this dog. But when the dog was taken away from her, she wilted.
Yep.
And she was no longer responsive. And so I knew to call and say, is there anything we can do about this so that she can have, the student can have the dog back?
And actually ended up being a service animal. She just was embarrassed to provide the paperwork at first,
So,
until Lori advocated for that.
so I think it's very important that the faculty are aware that this needs to be an open communication thing all the time, and not just at the beginning of the semester and the end, but also in the middle.
And
A lot of times we're scared if we don't know, we're scared
Yeah.
about what we can ask.
Or what you
what's-
can ask, yeah.
What's gonna be appropriate and not.
And I do appreciate that I get a lot more phone calls going, I just want to make sure this is okay that I did this, or, and I try to also, another thing that doesn't happen in high school that happens in college that students seem to struggle with is like integrity as far as testing. So when we have, a lot of times we have students who take 3 classes back to back. Well, that middle class is their English class and it's an in-class essay and they want to be in the testing center for their time and a half, which is fine. But if they use it, then they're going to be late to their next class. So I usually try to say, is it okay if they come in after their last class and do that? I mean, they're not going out and chatting with their friends about what was on the test, about the essay. So that in this semester, we've had a few that, you know, they'll start a test and then one got sick. He was like, I just don't feel like, I have a headache, I don't want to test anymore, and walked out. They're like, and then wanted to come back. I'm like, no, you can't. You saw the essay. You saw the prompt. You can't come back. And he was like, what do you mean I can't come back? Like he was so shocked. And Leah was like, she called me, she was like, I'm so worried. And the teacher gave him a new prompt, which was very nice and I didn't ask, but the teacher offered him a new prompt and to finish that test, or he would have totally failed because it was half the test, I think. And so we just explained to him that, you know, the reason that you can't just hand a student a test and you can walk to the testing center is because you can share that information with others. And although you may not be that person, there are people who do it, and it only takes one bad person to ruin it for everyone. So we have to keep teachers send the test over. That's why you have to notify them as soon as they announce there's going to be a test. You tell them you're going to be in the testing center. Don't wait till the day of and show up.
I guess we're kind of winding down in terms of time, but there's one other thing that I want to make mention of because we've been dealing with it in our transition to the Canvas LMS, but just remembering that we need to be aware of of the materials that we're posting online and the accessibility of those in terms of closed captioning on videos and that sort of thing. Do you have a quick word or two about that?
Yeah, I've got to learn a lot, apparently. I know there are ways to do it. Technologically, I don't know what they are. I can tell you have to have an alt text for a caption and a picture. Can I tell you how to do that? No.
Sometimes, some of that we're learning in Canvas.
Yes. And we are going to, actually, they opened up today, there's a accessibility certification that I'm going to attempt to log in and register for today, that I actually have to go to class for the next 6 weeks and do a capstone project on. And yeah, you want to put that on my calendar? You roll your eyes because you know what it looks like. And hopefully within that, I can learn more information to hand our faculty. And I've discussed it with Dean Indy. I really want to roll that out when we roll out Canvas so that we are on the same page. The two biggest pieces of legislation that just came down from the OCR and actually through the DOJ, but Department of Justice, was that two major universities, whom I can't think of right now, one's in California, were sued because their website was not accessible by a screen reader. These people were not students at that college. They were looking on that website to find out information, and JAWS would not read their website because it was not accessible. They filed a lawsuit and won. So it's not just what you're teaching in class to people who are our students, it's what we're putting out to everyone. And I sent several issues with our website to Karen Burkle to try to work with the people we pay to run our website to get that straightened out. Hopefully, they're in the process of getting that done. I told her we would get back in December to try to rerun there's a place that we can run it through that gives us examples. We are also getting the newest version of JAWS. It should be here this week, actually. When it gets loaded in the library, I was going to sit down at JAWS myself and have it read our website and see where we hit or miss. I mean, that's the best way to do it, right? To just act like I'm the person who needed that help. But I wanted to do it with my new technology, not what we have, because it's last season's update. You know how that goes. So hopefully I can be able to give you more specific instruction coming soon. Mike asked for a lot and I was going, I don't know how to do any of that. I mean, I know what to tell you to do. Yeah. Technologically, I don't know what to do to click it to make that happen.
In some cases, for instance, in Canvas, I've seen in some of the webinars I've been in, that if you go, let's say, to Flickr, because their images are in they're in the public domain.
Yes.
And you import an image in your course. And from there, there's a box that you check where it then gives it a label that a screen reader will read.
We'll say, this is a picture of a college campus with a rainbow behind it and a chair that sits out in front of an umbrella. Like, it's very specific.
And so in that sort of thing, there's just a box that you check. And then I've also in one of the webinars, they gave us, the participants, a website that will check your accessibility and
WebAIM, probably, maybe.
Like for PowerPoints?
Because like in Word and PowerPoint, it's very specific about how you should enter it and what you should use for a reader to be able to read it, a screen reader.
Wouldn't it be appropriate for you to have this discussion with Sherry Rodriguez?
Yes, well, and she is. We're in on it. Because I'm on this committee.
On the Canvas committee, and Cheryl is on there.
And that's what hopefully if I can get in, they only accept 20 people for this project, so hopefully, because that will be where I learn it all. I mean, I don't know how else I'm going to learn it. And I do know we looked into there are places where, let's say you're going to teach Beowulf and you have a movie version of Beowulf you want to use in your course. There's a place that I can say, this is the movie we're using, please caption it. And they will caption it and then within 24 hours send it back to me in a text version and in caption version for her to use in her classroom. And it's like $1 a minute or something, I don't remember. Like, it depends on what you use, which one you use. But there's companies that are paid to do that because YouTube is called captions for a reason. Because if you've ever watched a YouTube video with captions on, especially as a person with any English in you, you're like, it's because it's all wrong. So we try to discourage YouTube, but it happens a lot.
What about like TED Talks?
TED Talks are the same way, yes. We can put caption to TED Talks. And a lot of them have them embedded like that. It depends on where you pull it from.
So like if we create our own videos,
Right, then I would have to have those captioned. And I've got to,
but that would be on like an individual basis. It wouldn't be like all instructors should be making videos.
absolutely, absolutely.
If you know it on the front end and you're able to create, like,
Yeah.
make sure that you check that box when you import a picture or something, then that's gonna make it easier down the road, but.
Which is what I appreciate, that Canvas does let you know, whereas Moodle doesn't. If you install something, it doesn't give you that option, so. I am in the process of learning.
Right.
It's a lot, and I don't think I realized that until I went to the distance learning conference, in April. Oh my gosh, I was so overwhelmed. My brain was exploding. So, it's all tags and embedded content, and
Thank you so much.
it's scary.
Yeah.
I came back going, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it. I was in a panic mode.
Well, Dawn, thank you for agreeing.
Well, thank y'all
to be
for
here.
coming.
Thank you to everyone. We have been recording and we'll be distributing that to some people who've asked for it. So.
Recorded today?
Oh, I didn't know I'm glad you did that because just to echo what you said a few minutes ago, the subconscious bias of in academia or even our daily lives, there are a lot of us who don't know that we are biased against people with disability. And it tends to show sometimes if through our actions and how we interact with them. Maybe getting more education about what it entails will make us a little bit more sensitive to their needs, and then maybe we can become better. So I thank you for you guys organizing this, and hopefully a lot of faculty members and as well as staff members should be able to see what has been working.
Call and ask, email and ask if you ever have a question. That's the easiest way. That way we're all covered. And we help the student. That's what matters.
Thank you. If you'll turn in your
Thank you.
response forms, I